Namaste and welcome to Indian History and Archaeology. I'm your host, Dr. Lachwanti Shani, and today we have a very special guest on ArchaeoTalks. He's not an archaeologist, he's not a historian either, but what this man is doing is extremely special to both fields, as a matter of fact. Vijay Kumar began as a blogger and he's gone on to set up a non-profit organization for repatriating Indian antiquities. This is a layperson's interest in Indian history taking him that far, something which I would say is an inspiration for all of us, really. It's not enough to discover sites, it's not enough to preserve temples also if we do not have our gods in those temples. I'm not going to say anything more. I want you to find out further from the man himself. Thank you so much for joining me today, Vijay. First of all, from the little bit that I know of your involvement with the repatriation of the idols, thank you. And I'm congratulating you as well with this.
Thank you.
So I'll begin with my question for you first.
Sure.
Tell me about the India Pride project.
So what we started off as a group of friends documenting heritage sites. We were all, let's say, bit by the history heritage bug when we read a book of historic fiction in Tamil called Ponniyin Selvan, which is currently running it's been made into a movie by Mani Ratnam. But we all read it in its long form, which was written about 60 years ago by Kalki Krishnamurti, who's like, for us, he wrote this immortal work on one of India's greatest emperors, sadly unknown in the north, King Rajaraja Chola. So this was fictionalized as a series for 5 years, over 5 volumes. So so this was a time before radio and television, I guess, and that caught the attention of almost the entire Tamil-speaking public. And my grandmother and my mother were all great fans, and they introduced me to the book. And once you read that, and then we form groups, and that was the early stages of Yahoo and Google groups, and we got discussing the work of historic fiction. And slowly, a lot of friends branched out. Some of them wrote sequels to the book. Some of them went into reading inscriptions and all that. But that time, I'd already moved to Singapore in 2006. I was in Singapore for 15 years. And miraculously, I discovered I had 3 more hours of my life thanks to the no traffic and commuting in Singapore. So, can I call you back? So, yeah, I was into photography and I was visiting sites, and friends wanted me to basically come out with let's say, an idiot's guide to temple art, like a dummy's guide to temple art. The idiots that we were, we wanted to document our learning process. And I didn't want to write a book at that point of time. I never wanted to be an author because I'd seen experts writing these long form books that looked as PhD theses and put me to sleep even. They went into libraries and not once read, not once issued. So I wanted to come out with a rather, let's say, a simplified version of my learning process of temple art and sculpture, and I started blogging about it. So I started blogging about it sometime in 2000. I was writing in Google groups, Yahoo forums, and then one of my friends in America at that point of time was tech illiterate. Even today I am, being a shipping guy and finance guy by profession. So at that point, he encouraged me, taught me how to blog, and he registered my site called Poetry in Stone. And I started blogging about it for, say, 3 years and about 300 odd bilingual posts that helped me reach out to a lot of like-minded people in India and abroad. And of course, we needed to get content for the blog as well. So we started traveling across the length and breadth of India and Southeast Asia, covering heritage sites and putting these images out in the net for free. And a lot of scholars who at that point of time would not travel to India requested us photographs. And from the start, we wanted it to be not a commercial venture. So we never uh, monetized it and never put our, let's say, copyright or photo marks, because we felt that when the original creators themselves didn't sign their works, who are we to put our watermarks on our photographs? And we gave our photographs freely to people to use. And that kind of expanded our scope. And of course, during some of these visits, we realized that objects that, before you go to a site, you basically on the photo tech gear, basically you need to fix what kind of lenses you need to carry and all that, because we used to do about a week to 10 days every 6 months. And so we read up upon it, and we used to have weekly discussions on what to see, how many sites to cover, what are the published works on it. So we used to collect all that. So by the time you hit a site, you really know what to expect, so that you don't come back missing something. And in terms of gear, you know what to carry and all that. So at many times when you went to these sites, objects that were supposed to be there were missing. And that's when we realized that there was something actively going on. And to put your readers in perspective, India and Italy actually campaigned the UN in 1917, pre-1970, to come up with a international convention to stop the rampant looting of antiquities from source nations, as we were called then and now, as though we are some mine fair that can dig for resources. So we campaigned the UN, but it's not that India did not have its own patrimony laws. India has had its cultural patrimony laws right from 1878, when the Buried Treasure Trove Act was enacted. We have acts from 1904, 1905, 1906, 1947, 1948, 1965, and then 1972, the current act, which is the Antiquities and Art Treasures Act. But the UN did not have the muzzle in the teeth. Even today, not many countries are signatories to the UN 1970 convention, but yeah, a few signed up, but they made it a point that it should not be retrospective. So post 1970, if you can prove that an object has been looted or smuggled, you don't even have to go to court. You just invoke the statute, and if the current country that has the object is a signatory, they have to return it back within 30 days or refute your claim. So after 1970, it's a very easy process, but 1970 is not kind of Lakshman Rekha that miraculously washes the stolen object. A stolen object continues to be a stolen object. Common law states that a thief cannot transfer good title. So if you're buying a stolen goods, you continue to hold an object without title. And since we already have our patrimony laws, we can fight, and we have successfully fought many cases of antiquities that have been trafficked before 1970 and brought them back to India as well.
That's good. That's really very good. Yeah, I mean, I hope this would be able to, this would be spread across the time zone complete, as you said, even before the independence as such.
So I would rather split it into three parts. One is colonial loot, which is more appealing to the moral rights. And I think for the first time we had success last year when the Glasgow Museum decided to return back 11 objects that were taken out during the colonial period. The first time India successfully asked for and it got back colonial loot, but of course thousands exist outside of India. And then there's this tricky period between when India was independent in 1947 till 1970, when the UN statute kicks in. And this was a time when there was rampant plunder and looting happening. You talk about the famous diplomatic bag, where diplomats living out of the country could basically misuse the privileges of diplomatic bag and take it out. Hundreds and thousands of, so hundreds of thousands of objects left India during that time. And then even after the 1970 Act, that's where the utter callousness of museums and auction houses come into play, wherein with little or nil paperwork, they spend millions acquiring our gods, literally. So I would say that there was equal blame on both sides. India did not follow up on its commitments on the 1970 Antiquities Convention, the illicit UN Convention, for example. We enacted the law, but didn't give it the teeth. And we did not, like there are some conventions like Convention 5 of the statute, basically says that you need to set up a national art laws register kind of thing, like a theft registry, educate people about theft. And since we did not care, Indian art was like, you go into a shop outside India, if there's an Italian antiquity or an Egyptian antiquity, an Indian antiquity, you would go for the Indian antiquity because India didn't care. And that's reflected, for example, in the 2013 CAG report on ASI and museums, which basically is a very, very sad picture it says that India from 1970 till 2000 brought back 19 antiquities, and from 2000 to 2012, it was zero.
Yeah.
2012 to now, we have crossed 600, and I'm happy that about 90 to 95% of that was involving our work and my team's work. And it's not that we're thumping and we're still scratching the surface, the tip of the proverbial tip of the iceberg. If we had had more
Right.
support, we could have done more. And we
I'm
are
sure.
confident.
Sorry, I'm interrupting here. During Rajiv Gandhi's time, we had this festival of India being held across the globe, and they were taking antiquities out to various countries for exhibitions. And I know many of the objects came back damaged. Some did not even come back. That sort of thing also was part of it then.
Yeah, there's been these, random WhatsApp forwards that keep coming up. But as far as I can
Okay.
see, yes, there was one with the Ganyachi that came back, had a broken nose. But apart from that, I've not seen any firm case of an object not returning. There is
Okay.
one Buddha from Bihar that was gifted by Indira Gandhi to Australia in the 1960s, when, for no apparent reason, she lands up in Australia. She wants to actually take back a koala bear but Australia refuses it. They say it's an endangered species, we can't give it to you. And for some reason, she decides to donate or give this Buddha that was in a plane. So why was the Buddha in a plane is $1 million question, I guess. And it's currently in the National Gallery of Australia with a provenance that says gifted by the government of India, but there's no paperwork that exists. So yeah, there are a lot of skeletons in that cabinet as well. But in terms of exhibitions that gone out, I've not seen any case, but if somebody has a case, we would be happy to take it up.
Okay. Right. So, well, you've already told me how you came to be into the picture, how you got interested in this whole thing. Now, yeah, tell me, what is the role of the India Pride project in the current repatriation that's been in the
So,
news now?
so what we do is, okay, maybe I can just explain our role. We work with law enforcement worldwide. We actually start documenting antiquities. We use our volunteers to report thefts. We also work with law enforcement worldwide to monitor auctions, museum acquisitions, match them against what's gone missing based on stylistic. A lot of people don't realize that stone and bronze murtis cannot be dated. There is no scientific way to date carbon date. So a lot of people, oh, why don't you carbon date? Carbon dating
Yeah.
means it has to be something that's lived. So both stone and bronzes, especially solid cast bronzes, which do not have a hollow core into which maybe you find some wood pieces, no. But for solid cast bronzes and stone images, which are mainly trafficked items, and you cannot date them. So it is only stylistic dating. But thankfully, because of the wide breadth of travel that we've done, we make it a point to go to the local museums in every state, every district. And now, after about a decade and a half, we can roughly pinpoint from which state, which dynasty, which year, based on the material, based on the stylism, we can pinpoint from where it was taken. So this comes a lot of help to border control. We work in capacity building both within India with DRI, CBI, customs, and also outside with Interpol and the US Homeland Security Metropolitan Police. Now, for example, if there's a border stop that happens in America and they find suspect sculpture, they would revert back to us, and we do this pro bono. They should technically be going back to India Customs and ASI, but I understand that in the past they tried, and as usual, it was not responded in time. So they do revert back to us, and we provide them real markers, clues into from where possibly they would be trafficked from, because obviously they're not going to declare as India. They would probably call it as product of Thailand. They would come in from Hong Kong. It will come in from, say, Nepal, but these are Indian objects. So yeah, so that's one work that we do. We also work with, for example, specified task forces, like there's a specified idle wing in Tamil Nadu. So we've been working with them for almost now 13 years, wherein we work in providing them vital clues. There is a French institute in Pondicherry that documented Indian antiquities, especially from Tamil Nadu in the 1950s and 60s. They documented about 5% of our deities. So till about 2013, 14, their archive was manual. It was not digitized, but now it's digitized. But it's old-fashioned elbow grease where you need to, these are photographs, black and white images taken in the 1950s. So you need to understand. And I chose as a field of specialty Chola bronzes, and Chola bronzes are considered the high watermark of Indian art. And sadly, that tag is given them the $1 million price tags. So Gupta art and Chola art are probably the biggest selling objects, though they were never destined to be objects of art. Chola bronzes, in my mother tongue, Tamil, we call them Tirumeni, which literally translates to being bodies of God, in the sense that they are worshipped as living beings. So they'll be woken up from their bedroom in the morning, sung to, bathed, clothed, ceremoniously fed, decked up. Ceremonies like marriages would happen to them, and then in the night they would be sung to sleep back to the bedroom. So yeah, so from being living gods, they've now been reduced to showpiece curios, and that is something that I'm currently working on. So after
idols in that sense,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah. So yeah, but thankfully, Chola bronzes are cast by a process called the lost wax method, which basically ensures that the wax core melts out. So what you do is you create the entire image in wax and then give it a coating of clay, and then once it hardens, you heat it up. The wax melts, leaving a hollow core into which the metal is poured, and then when it cools down, you break the clay mold to reveal the murti. So the mold is broken, so it cannot be reused like let's say Chinese objects where you can make hundreds and thousands of the same mold. So each one of these murtis are individually handmade, so they do come with their own specifications. So it's easier to match. And over 1,000 years of continuous worship, there are wear and tear, small breakages that happen, and we use that to identify. And we've kind of specialized in this, so we track them. So initially we worked predominantly with the Tamil Nadu art, but a lot of people think that Tamil Nadu is some hotbed of idol thieves. It is a hotbed, but it's not as random and as prevalent as other states. So other states are equally complicit. Just that Tamil Nadu has been more documented, and because of the bronze aspect, we have more success in claiming. And Tamil Nadu had been a hotbed right from the 1930s and 40s for smuggling. So we've been losing a lot of artifacts from Tamil Nadu. So there's a lot more effort, and we are hoping that other states follow suit. Karnataka, for example, started an idol wing 3 years ago, and then it's still, I think they forgot to name it the right one. So I think they're still an IDLE wing, not an idol wing. We tried to reach out to them a couple of times, and no response. Kerala has something called a temple protection force, which I don't think has done anything. If you compare what Italy has done, because as I told you, both India and Italy started the race together. Italy formed a Cardinal Art Squad, picking the best of their police force, gave them teeth, gave them lawyers, gave them technocrats. They now have the latest image matching software, web crawlers. They have identified and recovered almost 108,000 artifacts, compared to less than 1,000 for India. Nepal has recovered more than India. Cambodia has recovered more than India. So yeah, it's something that we are proud of what we've done, but we are still scratching the surface.
I'm sure, yes. I'm sure there's a lot to be done. So that's another question I have for you, of course. What are you looking at in the future? Besides that, let me connect another question with this. Apart from the US, you mentioned Italy. Are there any other countries that these antiquities find their way into?
No, Italy is actually a source nation. So Italy, Cambodia, Egypt, Nepal, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, all these are from where objects are taken. The markets, of course, are the erstwhile colonial powers, the EU. Bulk of it goes to the US. So if you split the demand side, it's mostly Australia, Singapore, where we find our artifacts. Germany, Amsterdam, London, and America. So the bulk of it is, of course, the US, because that's where I think the dollars are going. But London has been the traditional market. I think they have this fetish for holding on to their colonial mindset. They are happy to have murtis in their gardens and swimming pools.
Right. Yes, you do come across gardening pictures with antiques, sort of in corners around the gardens. Of course, a lot of them would also be terracotta pieces. So that's another aspect, of course, that you look at there. Besides the fact that, as you said, there's a price tag applied to these objects as such. In archaeology, if I may tell you some bit there, Of course, it began as a study of antiquities where, they were just taking away antiquities from Egypt and Mesopotamia initially. And then, of course, it started
Well,
to
the
come back to the
colonial word of
countries.
partage, they used to take a certain cut of the expeditions. It was not some hugely educational endeavors. This was a for-profit initiative where the colonial powers would go in, give their expertise in excavations and take back
Mhm.
the best of it. So this happened in India as well. For example, if you take
Right.
Amaravati, the best of Amaravati was split into three portions. One portion was given to Chennai Museum, one portion is in the Indian Museum in Calcutta, and the best of it was shipped back to London, where
Yeah.
they're currently in the British Museum. But unfortunately, people don't realize at that point of time, British archaeologists actually telling Elliot, don't take these, we can recreate it like what we have done in other stupas. Amaravati
Correct.
could have been recreated right there, but by the time he could get his power through, they were already shipped, and they actually stayed in a WAF in the open for 8 years before the British Museum bought it. And today they're exhibited thanks apparently to a Japanese interest and who built this temperature controlled showpiece. So when you enter the British
Okay.
Museum on right side, you see this glass case where, for no rhyme or reason, for example, they're displayed out of context. So the ceiling panels are in the lower ones on the front, and nobody knows what they are. So imagine if they had been recreated in situ, it would have been great. And plus, you add the 10 pound entrance fee as well.
Yes, absolutely. So before I let you go, let me ask you about your book also. Do tell
So
us about your
yeah,
book.
as I said, I'd never wanted to write a book, but then
Mhm.
in early 2016, when we started breaking the case about Kapoor, he was arrested. The villain of my book is Subhash Kapoor, so he was arrested in 2011 in September in Germany by an Interpol Red Corner notice led out by the Idle Wing. We had matched a couple of objects stolen from temples to his auction house, and he fought the extradition for about a year, and he was finally extradited to India in 2012 October. And last week, the judgment was pronounced where he was convicted of only 4 cases. And in 2016, Juggernaut, my publishers, reached out to one of our close associates, a journalist called Jason Felch, who had done exceptional work with Italian antiquities and exposing a prominent museum in America in his book, Chasing Aphrodite. And they asked him, you've covered the Kapoor case, and would you like to write a book? And Jason was good enough to tell them that if there's anybody who can write a book on Kapoor, it's Vijay who can do it. And so this was a commissioned book. It was a great risk because it's still an under trial. And as I told you, the conviction came only last week. So this was an
Mhm.
under trial book where we exposed the dark nexus. So this is a non-fiction
Okay.
work of how Kapoor and co raided not just India, but also Nepalese temples, Sri Lankan artifacts. So just give you things in perspective, Kapoor's storage locations were raided in 2012 by Homeland Security. 2,622 objects were recovered from 14 storage locations in New York to a value of $108 million. That's about 850 crores. This was just his holding stock, and he was in business for 35 years. And you add to it another 200 odd items that have been recovered from museums and famous museums like the Yale, who have dealt with Kapoor and who kept on to it. So we forced Yale with some matches to give back objects last year. So they actually held on to objects. The National Library of Australia initially couldn't cooperate, and we kept exposing them. Finally, 2 years ago, I think they said, okay, enough, don't keep anything, just return everything back. And they gave back, I think, $22 million worth of stuff to India. The Homeland Security has been very, very proactive. So to just keep things in perspective, I think America returned 18 objects since till 2016. And after that, they have done 247 and another lot of 307. So that's the scale of objects that come back from America. So yeah,
So it's
so
actually
this
these past. Yeah. Sorry. Continue.
yeah. So the book basically chronicles Kapoor and how the Idle Wing stumbled on this case and what happened among the various players. He was exposed by a jilted lover in Singapore. So it's got all the traps of how how he was 100% complicit. He knew this was a theft to order. So he used to visit sites, pick and choose the best of objects, and he was not unique. There have been bigger criminals, bigger smugglers. Like, for example, there was this known smuggler in Rajasthan called Vaman Gia, who was arrested thanks to a book by a BBC journalist called Peter Watson in 1998, wherein Vaman Gia and another two other networks were named in the book. They had sold about 10,000 works of Indian art via London, Sotheby's. So when the book came out, BBC did a 60 minutes on air show. Sotheby's closed down the London office. They sacked their two India reps who had come to India, did recce trips, picked the best of Indian art, and then it was sold. So this was not some random robber going. And so this was a targeted looting on industrial scale where the best of Indian art was moved to London for sale via Switzerland, a host of four Swiss companies. But then none of these objects ever came back. In 2013, Rajasthan High Court uh, let Vaman Gia go free. So it was really a shocking verdict. And sadly, the ASA has still not appealed the verdict. And we have now successfully got back at least 3 items belonging to the same gang to come back to India. The book actually, Peter Watson's book, it's called Sotheby's The Inside Story, talks about one chapter on India. It says, another gang is talking, saying, do you want the Taj Mahal? Let us know, we'll ship it out in parts to use. Not that I value the Taj Mahal very big. There are much better monuments in India, but that was the audacity of the thieves there.
So, do you see more of the objects you said would be coming back, hopefully more antiquities coming back in the future?
I think, yes, they should, because I think internationally there's a lot of pressure to come back.
What else would you suggest?
In Tamil Nadu, they have an amendment to the IPC section 380. So as I told you, we try heritage crimes either under the 1965 Customs Act or under IPC 380. So in IPC 380, it carries a maximum penalty of 7 years and a fine of 6,000 rupees. And in Tamil Nadu in 1993, they bought an amendment saying that the minimum penalty is 3 months. So a lot of these idle thieves were getting away with 3 months. So they wanted, in some good intention, they said, let's keep a minimum penalty as 3 years. But they forgot to put the minimum. So what happened was they have a state amendment in 1993 that says for temple theft, it should be 3 years. That's all. They left it at that. So sadly, because of that, in Tamil Nadu, if you rob a house, it's 7 years. If you rob a temple, it's 3 years. That's the maximum penalty. So that's why when Kapoor was convicted of 4 cases, it was 4 into 3. Maximum penalty was given as 12 years. So if Kapoor had to be convicted in Karnataka, for example, he would have got 4 into 7 as the maximum penalty. He would never leave. But yeah, so this is how stupid we are. And it's been, this amendment has stayed for the last 30 years.
That has to change now. That is one major thing that has to change. What about the ASI? As a matter of fact, I have approached the director of the antiquities wing in the ASI, the antiquities section, and hopefully I'll get to talk to him soon also.
First of all, ASI is a custodian. Are they the custodian or the caretaker? The role is not clear. I'm not saying this because they don't have an investigative arm. They don't have the budgets. In fact, we've got back a lot of these objects that are sitting in high commissions because they're waiting for the budget approval to transport them back to India. So the question is, they don't have, the Antiquities Act does not have any bigger penalty. So if you don't register an antiquity, maximum penalty is 6 months. But then if you say, I don't know whether, should I register? I don't know. Then the court say, okay, go. That's it. So technically the ASA has no teeth and they have no muzzle and they have no budget. So I think it's wrong to even put this under the ASI. ASI should, and they don't have the capacity to even validate artifacts. They don't have the capacity to document. The registration process is still manual. So I think we need to understand to say that one, a watchman cannot be investigating himself. So if you're talking about the DRI, for example, the DRI comes from Customs Canada. So do you think the DRI will go after customs people? So the idea is, will ASI report their own thefts? So the idea is we need to have a central squad, but people who understand art crime. And countries like Italy are willing to help in capacity building. They're willing to share knowledge, but sadly, nobody from India is going to these conferences, going to these workshops. So I think we cannot, and it should not be under. So the ASI has to do excavation work, and that's it. And preservation and follow-up should be a different section altogether.
Right, because as you say, these are from living temples. These are living gods from temples active today as such, right?
It's
Whereas
not in
ASI
their
basically comes into picture when they're looking after or preserving.
not that they don't look at it as their job spec, so they look at it as though they're doing a favor by taking up these restoration as additional work. Oh, this guy from Chennai is calling again, now he wants us to work on a new case. So it should be the other way around, and that's why I said we should incentivize whistleblowers. For example, if customs catch bullion or drugs, they get an incentive, but if they catch heritage crime, there's nothing. So the idea is, why would somebody devote 7 months, 8 months on a case if he can do that to an electronic smuggling? So today, if they catch a kilo of heroin or 200 grams of gold, he goes back with money in his pocket. Whereas if he catches a murti, maybe he goes back with good karma. But today, I think dollars and cents make more value, but not to us, not to you. But we need to understand that on the ground, we don't have the expertise, we don't have the incentives, nor is there a will to crack. Nobody wants to open the skeleton because they feel that they're scared.
Right. All right. Thank you so much for this time that you've given to us today. I really appreciate that. And hopefully we will come back together again with more information, positive information, of course, also. Right?
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Good
Vijay.
luck. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure
Hind.
talking to you.
I hope you've enjoyed this talk today. Please do share your thoughts with us on this topic in the comment section below this video itself. And of course, do hit the like button if you liked it. You can also share this video with your friends and family to let them also know about this issue. Also, do subscribe to our channel. That just helps us grow. It doesn't cost you anything, of course. Thank you so much for joining us today. Namaste. Please click on the like button on YouTube and wherever else you are watching us from to help others find this video as well. Also, subscribe to the channel to help us bring you more such content. IHA now accepts content contributions. And if you would like to support our work with paid promotions or sponsorships, please email us for further information.